point your attention or turn it back to this young woman who is fighting for her life right now in critical condition after being attacked on a CTA train. There are so many questions about how this could have happened and how it could be prevented for the many people who take the train or any type of public transportation moving forward. Let's go ahead and bring in a former FBI agent, Ross Rice. Ross, thank you so much for your time.
Hi, Anita. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. What was your first reaction to hearing, let me ask you this first, about what happened on the CTA train?
Well, my initial reaction was shock that something like this would happen. But as we get into it more, the charges were announced and the background of the person that committed this heinous act became known. Unfortunately, it wasn't surprising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when you say not surprising, we're really speaking of the long history of issues around this particular suspect.
Exactly. It's quite apparent, at least to me from the outside, that this person has unaddressed mental health issues. And that has been the cause of many of the crimes, the horrific crimes that we've seen locally and nationally over the past 10, 15 years. And the situation isn't getting any better. The problem is getting worse. And it really needs to be addressed from a legal standpoint. Trying to get somebody involuntarily committed in Illinois or virtually anywhere else in the country is next to impossible. And until that changes and people that have these issues can get the help that they need in a confined, controlled environment, I'm afraid we're going to continue to see these problems.
Yeah, I was kind of reading through the documents, and he had actually been released from a psychiatric hospital after knocking someone out, unconscious. So then you wonder, okay, if the person isn't well enough to even be in a psych ward, how in the world could they be well enough to be just among the general public?
They can't be. And as evidenced by the crime that he's charged with now, he shouldn't have been out and about. And it appears that he was in court several weeks earlier for a similar offense, and he was released on some sort of electronic monitoring, which he obviously didn't abide by, and he wasn't closely monitored enough. So this should have never happened. It's unfortunate. And I hope the young lady that was injured makes a full and complete recovery.
Certainly, we're all wishing for that, that she will make a full recovery. I don't know if you ever fully get past something like this happening to you,
No.
Even if she physically recovers. You brought up one of the systems, I'll say, that is really being called into question right now, and that is electronic monitoring in the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. Obviously, there have been some recent changes in terms of who is monitoring them.
That's true. And what people don't realize is if you're on monitoring of some sort, someone has to be monitoring you. So let's extrapolate that. How many people are on some sort of electronic monitoring? And then how many people are available to monitor them? And if they violate the terms or conditions of the electronic monitoring, then what? Are they taken into custody? Are they held pre-trial? There's just a lot of unanswered questions here that I think need to be addressed, and they weren't really thought through, in my opinion, when the Safety Act was enacted a couple years ago, and it essentially abolished cash bail.
And that's was going to be another point of contention for a lot of people right now, that the multitude of arrests, and I believe there were like over 50. I mean, there were tons of mugshots of this man over the years. Should have said that this was a person who should be behind bars for a very long time, and that never really happened.
Well, it's definitely a person that should have been receiving medical attention, medical treatment for diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health problems, at the very least, if not incarcerated until those problems were addressed. He should not have been released on any type of electronic monitoring, because it just isn't effective, Anita. There's just not enough people doing the actual monitoring, And when they violate the terms and conditions of their release, then you have to find them. And that's what happened here. He was out and about. There's video of him filling up a glass bottle, I believe it was a tea bottle, with gasoline. And then half an hour later, he's on the CTA, and for no apparent reason, he douses a female passenger with the gasoline and sets her on fire. I mean, that's just unconscionable.
It really is. And from the perspective that we can have at this point in time, it seems like it could have been anyone.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't appear that this woman had any interaction or any contact with the suspect. She was minding her own business, going home from work, as I understand it, looking at her phone, and the next thing she knows, she's been set on fire. And it's just a tragedy.
Very much so. So let's talk about prevention. Maybe even from a personal standpoint. She was just on her phone on the train. This man is behind her and walks up and douses her with that gasoline. So it seems as though some type of attack was premeditated, maybe not the person, but there was some premeditation in putting gasoline in a bottle at least. Is there anything that we can do differently?
I wish I had an answer to that question, but unfortunately I don't. This young lady was looking at her on her phone, I'm not sure which, and she wasn't obviously paying attention to her surroundings, but she didn't feel a need to. And if you look at the similar case that was in, I believe, Charlotte, North Carolina, earlier this year, where a young Ukrainian woman was killed from behind for no apparent reason. Somebody snuck up from behind her. So situational awareness only goes so far. You can't be in a position where when you're out in public, you're on guard 24/7. It's just impractical. So I don't know what more can be done other than identifying people that have these issues and making sure they're not out in public until they've been treated.
So let's talk about another system here. Are the CTA trains safe?
Well, that's a great question. I'm sure that this incident is going to deter people from riding the CTA, at least in the short term. Thousands of people take CTA trains and buses every day, and they get to and from their destinations without incident. It's when something like this happens, what we would call a high-profile incident, that gets people's attention. Generally speaking, it's safe, but I think the woman that's in the hospital right now fighting for her life would say no.
Right.
And no one wants to be in that situation. How you can prevent this, what more the CTA or the Chicago police can do, I don't know. You can't have an officer on every train and every bus 24/7. There are just not enough police officers. So it comes down to personal responsibility, but as I pointed out, that's almost impossible to do.
Yeah, and I think it's New York that has had the National Guard on some of their trains. Do you think that this calls for that step?
I don't think it would hurt. National Guard is not normally trained for law enforcement or deterrence, but they can be. And within the military, there are military police units. They have a slightly different mission, but you know, the General Assembly just passed a mass transit bill to fund mass transit to the tune of billions of dollars. Well, that's great, but if people don't feel confident riding mass transit, whether it's the CTA or the commuter trains or buses, then what's the point of having the funding if no one's on it? So something needs to be done. I don't think, to get back to your question, I don't think having the National Guard deployed in trouble areas and on CTA trains and buses is a bad idea. It can't hurt, right? It can't make the situation any worse.
You know, I would ask you, are the recent incidents we've seen, are they consistent with any broader national trends on transit crime that you know of?
I don't think so. There have been sporadic reports of similar incidents or crime on mass transit throughout the country. They're few and far between, fortunately. But the problem is when they happen and they get this type of publicity, as I mentioned before, it deters people from riding mass transit. And it gets back to the original point, then if people aren't going to ride it because they don't feel safe, then why fund it? Why have it? And people need to feel safe riding mass transit in order for them to take it.
Yeah, I remember, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, when there were like 4 people who were killed, I believe, at the end of the line and on the train.
Yep.
And, that opened up a conversation against systems, opened up a conversation about people who sleep on trains or at this time of year may find the train to be like a home in the middle of the night versus sleeping out and about in the city.
Absolutely. And that gets back to the problem of homelessness, having enough shelters. Again, this is an anecdotal observation. I can't pull up any facts to support this, but I'm sure many of the people that are homeless in Chicago and other parts of the country have either substance abuse issues or mental health issues that are being inadequately addressed. So yeah, they're going to ride the trains, they're going to ride the buses to stay warm, especially in the winter, and you increase the risk of incidents like this happening.
Yeah. So what are some signs that we should look for that something might not be quite right? And what can you do on a train?
Well, the most important thing, Anita, is what we call situational awareness. You can't be on the phone, you can't be watching a movie or streaming a video. You have to put the phone down and you just have to be alert as to who's around you. Does anyone make you feel uncomfortable? Do you have a rapid means of escape if a situation arises? And it's very hard for people to do that in this day and age, but that is probably the most important thing to do as far as protecting yourself. And then you want to minimize your exposure. It's safer to ride the trains and to ride mass transit during rush hour than it is late at night. But for some people, that's not an option.
Yeah.
So really, situational awareness, know your surroundings, know who's by you, and try to sit with your back to a wall so you're looking out, not have somebody sitting behind you that you can't see.
Yeah. Goodness grief. Are there any other takeaways from this that you think we should be making note of?
Well, beyond the incident itself and the need for situational awareness and being aware of your surroundings, I think it was interesting that this case has been charged federally. There is a federal statute involving terrorism and mass transit. I think this is a little bit of a stretch. It wasn't what the authors of that legislation really had in mind, but it certainly fits. And in this case, with the criminal history of the defendant, the seriousness of the crime, I think it was a bold and appropriate step for the U.S. Attorney in Chicago to use that statute to address this case.
Do you think it will be used as a political ploy?
I'm not sure I follow, Anita.
Do you think that it will be used as a marker of, okay, here's what's happening in Chicago. Yet again, there is an issue that's not being addressed in Chicago, that type of thing?
Oh, I'm sure that President Trump is going to take note of this and make an issue out of it. On the other hand, I think the mayor and I think the governor should take note of this as well and say, we really need to address safety, public safety on mass transit if we're going to have people ride it. What the appropriate response is, I'm not sure. You mentioned deploying the National Guard. If the governor wants to do that and the mayor allows it, I think it would be a good first step. Like I said before, there aren't enough police officers in Chicago to have one on every train and every bus. And I don't know that there's enough National Guard troops. But the more of a presence that you have, the safer people are going to feel. And I think it will act as a deterrent against some people. Those with mental health issues, I don't think it's going to be much of a deterrent at all. but it could be a preventative. They could intervene before the situation gets out of control.
Well, again, I think the most important thing is that this young woman recovers as much physically as possible, but lots of conversations about where we go moving forward from this for sure. Thank you so much for your time, Ross. We always appreciate it.
My pleasure, Anita. Thank you.
All right, you take care.